My name's Ava Brooks. I'm 29, and I never thought I'd be standing in a Manhattan courtroom while my millionaire husband tried to erase me like a typo. Grant Whitaker, Mr. Real Estate Golden Boy, the one whose smile sits on bus stop billboards, stared past me with that polished calm he saves for investors and magazine covers. His lawyer adjusted a silk tie, cleared his throat, and announced to the judge that I had married under false pretenses. According to them, I wasn't a partner. I was a con. A waitress with a fake resume who inserted herself into corporate decisions to siphon value. And because of a misrepresentation clause in our prenup, I should walk away with exactly nothing but a taxi fare. I felt the gallery lean toward the drama like flowers toward sunlight. Grant even offered his most sympathetic tilt of the head as if he were the wronged hero. He'd rehearsed this. Of course he had. Grant rehearses everything from handshakes to heartbreak. What I did next started months earlier, when I still believed our balcony breakfasts meant something. We met at a charity open house I coordinated in Brooklyn. He stepped through the door with the city's skyline behind him and a pocket square the color of a secret. He listened when I briefed him, laughed at the right moments, sent flowers the next morning. Peonies, 2 dozen, and a card that said, "You make complicated look easy." I'd spent my life solving other people's chaos. Venues, permits, ice sculptures that arrive as puddles. But Grant's attention felt like the opposite of chaos. It felt deliberate. He swept me into a world of valet stands and tasting menus. On the night he proposed, the lights of the East River looked like a jeweled string we could pick up and wear. "Build a life with me," he said, opening a ring box that made the maitre d' forget his own name. The prenup came via courier the next morning, wrapped in leather and confidence. "Just standard," Grant said, kissing my hair. "My board insists." I skimmed, saw phrases like equitable distribution and independent counsel recommended, heard my heart doing cartwheels, and signed. The first hairline crack appeared on our honeymoon in Santa Barbara when he forgot my coffee preferences but could recite cap rates for 12 buildings from memory. I told myself newlyweds learn, adjust, smooth the burrs. What I didn't expect was how quickly I'd become a prop in his performance. At galas, he praised my brilliant wife's operational mind. But at home, whenever I suggested anything, vendor changes for his company parties, how to fix a broken tenant portal, he'd smile and say, "Leave the heavy lift to me, sunshine." The condescension was a drip you don't hear until you're ankle deep. Then came the financial favor. He needed a part-time consultant for Whitaker Urban Holdings. "Pure optics," he said. Someone to sign off on event invoices, routed through a small internal team he called Community Impact. I'd oversee nothing complicated, just signatures, a few meetings, all above board. He emailed a simple 1-page contract with a generous stipend. "Say yes, so my auditors stop nagging," he teased. I said yes because wives say yes to help. For a while, life looked like a magazine spread. Rooftop dinners, matching luggage, me beaming beside a man who knew how to own rooms. But late nights crept in, and with them, secrecy. His phone lived face down. His CFO, Lyle, started showing up to our apartment with folders I wasn't allowed to touch. When I asked questions, Grant shifted the subject with jokes about my cinnamon obsession or stories from the war zone, his term for development bids. I didn't go snooping. The truth knocked on our door by mistake. A courier delivered a box while Grant was out. Thinking it was a gift, he loved surprise merch with his logo. I opened it and found 3 binders labeled Community Impact, Expense Routing. Inside, invoices issued to shell vendors with names like Evergreen Outreach and Maple Street Solutions, each approved by A. Brooks, all paid by Whitaker Urban, then immediately reimbursed by a separate LLC tied to Lyle. The kicker? Those payments then boomeranged into an entity called Whitaker Legacy Fund, Grant's private slush charity that donated to initiatives he controlled. It looked like round-tripping, money leaving the company, washing through fake community projects, then resurfacing where he wanted it. My signatures, scanned and pasted, rubber-stamped the whole thing. My stomach went cold enough to keep fish fresh. I took photos. I checked our house scanner logs. That's when I noticed several signature blocks created from a single scan of my name the week we returned from our honeymoon. I needed a professional. I hired Detective Nina Vargas, a forensic bookkeeper who wore jeans to court and had a laugh like a door latch. We met in a diner that smelled like coffee and redemptions. I slid her the binder photos. She didn't blink. Classic optics loop, she said, tapping a page with a chipped thumbnail. Dress the spend as community work, detour it, re-record it as philanthropic or capex. The problem for him is he left you in the paperwork and forged your approvals. In 3 weeks, Nina built me a map, shell companies registered to Lyle's college roommate, an internal memo where Lyle bragged, "Ava is perfect, trusted, presentable, doesn't ask questions," and one breathtaking audio clip. Lyle and Grant had recorded a prep call for an investor dinner, forgetting their call recording app was live. In it, Lyle asked, "If this blows back, we hang the approvals on Ava, right?" Grant replied, crisp as a winter apple, "That's what the prenup is for." That sentence cracked whatever love was left. I hired a litigator, Morgan Hale, a woman who smiled like a blade. We filed for divorce quietly. Grant responded loudly. He moved first in the press, a leak about my fabricated credentials, whisper campaigns that I used his name to grift. And now, here we were, fluorescent lights humming, the court stenographer ready, Grant's team performing indignation. Mrs. Whitaker misrepresented her education and her role, his lawyer said. The prenup's misrepresentation clause is dispositive. I stood, palms dry, heart steady. Your Honor, I said, before I'm erased by a clause, I'd like to introduce defendants Exhibit A through H. Morgan set a thick manila envelope on the clerk's desk like a ticking clock. The judge peered over his glasses. Proceed. Part 2, I promise, is where the room stops breathing. And yes, if you've ever been underestimated by someone who thought paperwork was power, keep reading. What happens when truth hits daylight is worth the wait. Morgan began with Exhibit A, a screen share video Nina had prepared that walked the court through the money's path like a subway map. Transfers hopped from Whitaker Urban to Evergreen to Maple Street into Whitaker Legacy, then into a holding company Grant used to finance personal brand ventures. Each approval in the chain bore my forged signature. Grant's jaw did that small tick it does when he calculates underwater. Exhibit B, the scan log from our apartment multifunction printer, showing the creation of abrooksignblock.png 3 days after our wedding. Exhibit C, the audio. Morgan let it play without theatrics. Lyle. If this blows back, we hang the approvals on Ava, right? Grant. That's what the prenup is for. The gallery inhaled like a single lung. The judge's pen stopped moving. Exhibit D, a memo from Lyle instructing a junior accountant to route Ava's approvals through community impact so the optics stay clean. The junior, now a protected whistleblower, had sworn it under oath. Grant's lawyer objected 3 times. Foundation, hearsay, irrelevant. The judge overruled like a metronome. When the audio ended, the judge turned to me. Ms. Brooks, did you ever authorize the use of a scanned signature? No, Your Honor. Did you ever knowingly approve the transactions reflected here? No, Your Honor. I thought I was signing off on event budgets I managed personally. These invoices never crossed my desk. Grant finally spoke. Your Honor, this is a business dispute being mischaracterized in family court. My wife is confused about internal allocations. She was never targeted. Morgan didn't blink. Then he won't mind Exhibit E. She projected calendar invites labeled Ava Approval Session, scheduled by Lyle for dates when flight receipts proved I was out of state running venues. In the corner of one invite, a note. Bring the stamp. She's in Denver? The stamp was a clear acrylic block with my signature etched, seized from Lyle's office after a subpoena. Grant's color drained. Lyle stared at the table, a man memorizing wood grain to avoid the future. Your Honor, Morgan said softly. Mr. Whitaker's team laundered money through sham vendors and used Ms. Brooks's identity to sanitize the paper trail. Now he's invoking a misrepresentation clause to strip her of marital rights. That clause cannot shield fraud. Grant's lawyer pivoted to the prenup itself. Mrs. Whitaker signed with independent counsel available. Available isn't provided, Morgan cut in. And consent obtained through material omission isn't consent. Mr. Whitaker failed to disclose the pre-existing community impact structure that would place Ms. Brooks's identity at risk. He also failed to disclose that the prenup's misrepresentation clause was drafted to be used as a sword in exactly this scenario. See Exhibit F. Up went an email from Grant to outside counsel while we were engaged. Need teeth in misrep provision in case we ever have to isolate Ava from corporate liabilities. Silence is loud when a plan confesses itself. The judge exhaled, long and level. Mr. Whitaker, I'm prepared to make preliminary findings. I find the misrepresentation clause unenforceable due to fraud and bad faith in its procurement and intended use. I find credible evidence that Ms. Brooks's signature was forged or misused. The prenuptial agreement is hereby void. We will proceed on equitable distribution. Grant surged to his feet. You can't. I just did, the judge said, gavel-light but final. Furthermore, I'm referring the financial exhibits to the district attorney's office for review. Court is in recess. The gallery erupted into whispers. Reporters' pens looked like tiny swords. Grant's lawyer tugged him back into his chair. Lyle's hands shook. I didn't gloat. I breathed. What followed was months of sorting, valuing, unwinding. Equitable distribution meant numbers and nausea. It meant accountants poring over assets Grant once displayed like trophies. The Tribeca penthouse, the Montauk place with the cedar deck, the 9-figure portfolio of buildings that gave him his billboard smile. We settled before trial. 50% of marital assets, clear title to the penthouse. A monitored buyout schedule for my share of Whitaker Urban, rebranded, by court order, to shed the stink. Grant kept his last name and a slightly dimmer version of his legend. I kept my name, my work ethic, and something better than revenge. Agency. And life, as it does when you turn the page, wrote new margins. Nina introduced me to Caleb Hart, a 35-year-old data forensics founder who teaches junior coders on Saturdays and drinks diner coffee like it's a sport. He didn't care that I'd been in Page 6. He cared whether the servers at my venues had health insurance and whether I liked my eggs runny. I don't. When I told him I'd signed something I barely understood because I was in love, he didn't lecture. He asked, "What language would have made you pause?" Then he built me a checklist called, "Read it like it's a contract for your future." It lives on my fridge, under a magnet shaped like the Brooklyn Bridge. I didn't move on by changing zip codes. I changed terms. I launched Block and Beam, an events company that only takes clients who sign a transparency charter. Pay vendors on time, no exposure discounts, no shadow invoices. We publish every spend over $10,000 on a private dashboard vendors can see. My team says it feels like hosting parties inside a greenhouse, beautiful and clear. A year after the judgment, a broker friend called. Don't freak out, she said, which guaranteed I would. Lyle's quietly shopping his brownstone. He needs out fast. I walked past the listing twice before I rang the bell. He answered with the gray face of a man whose story had caves in it. Ava, he said, like a prayer and a warning. I'm not here to gloat, I told him. I'm here to buy. We closed in 30 days. I didn't keep the house. I donated it to a nonprofit that provides transitional housing for women leaving financially abusive marriages. On the deed transfer line, where it asked reason for donation, I wrote, "Because paperwork should protect the right people." As for Grant, I hear he swapped tailored suits for t-shirts and podcasts. He rails about cancel culture, then pivots to the comeback. Maybe he'll get it. Maybe he won't. Not my curriculum. People ask what winning felt like. It didn't feel like a headline or a check. It felt like handing an envelope to a judge and realizing I wasn't the one on trial for believing in love. It felt like sleeping through the night for the first time in 2 years. It felt like that click in your chest when the lock finally turns and a door you thought was jammed forever swings open and sunlight finds the floorboards. If you're where I was, squinting at fine print while someone tells you it's standard. Hear me. Standard is a story powerful people tell to keep you from asking who writes the standards. Ask. Bring a pen. And if the answers change when you write them down, you've already found your truth. Caleb proposed on a ferry between Brooklyn and Manhattan at golden hour. Ring simple, voice steady. "Marry me," he said, "and we'll read everything together, even the boring pages." I laughed and said yes. I kept my last name because that's the one that learned how to fight. On our wedding day, my vows were short. "I promise clarity," I said. "I promise curiosity. I promise to hand you the envelope before we get to court." He grinned. Deal. And out there somewhere, on a bus stop billboard peeling in the sun, a smile looks a little lonelier than it used to. Paperwork no longer claps for it. Mine does for me.